Okay, can you hear me? Maybe I should just skip my talk since no one believes it's an improvement, and let's go have some drinks. So hi, I'm Nadia, and this is last talk of the conference on Friday evening about React Server Components, you all heroes. A few random facts about me to just kick off the talk. I've been a developer for way too many years now. I worked in different companies on different products. I spent a few years working on everyone's favorite issue tracker called Jira. And then 3 months ago, I joined a small Australian startup as a principal engineer. I also have hobbies, and one of them is I love to travel. But also, I'm a little bit lazy. So because of that, I once relocated from Australia to Austria just because it was easier to spell. I'm a bit of a nerd, and my second hobby is to investigate how things work and then write the results down. I spent the last few years investigating everything that I could about front-end performance and React. And I got so good at those investigations and writing them down that I ended up with a whole bunch of them, a whole bunch of deep dives and articles about React and performance in my blog, and even 2 books on the topic, you guessed it, React and performance. So because of all of this, I used to joke that when it comes to React, I've seen it all. But then 2 things happened. First of all, AI took over the world, as some of you might have noticed. And then I joined a small startup where they went all in on server components and AI coding. Oh boy. Now I've seen it all. I have some stories to tell you. That will be by the end so that I know that you keep around. So basically, server components in combination with a really, really fast pace of the very small startups supercharged by AI produced some interesting results. But first, let's focus on the tech stuff, why we're here. I'm going to share with you what server components are, how they work, what the difference is between them and more traditional forms of rendering, like server-side or even client-side. And because this is still a React conference, and also because I just love info dumping on people who can't get away easily. So also, I will show you some numbers from my initial performance investigation on how all of them measure against each other, with and without data fetching. And at the end, we'll share the stories and show you how it actually works in a real world of a small Australian startup. And also, but if you ever wondered whether AI will replace developers soon, I will share some opinions on that as well. OK, so let's start quickly with the tech stuff, server components. In this audience, I hope everyone at least heard of them. So because server components have been everything anyone talked about in the last couple of years before the AI takeover. The main promise is quite simple. We push more work to the server, we ship less JavaScript, we then fetch data early, and then your initial load gets faster. But how exactly does this happen? And how much of a performance improvement can I expect? This is what I want to investigate. But then here's the kicker. Server components is not something that I can measure in isolation or just turn on and off. It's a complicated React feature that is deeply integrated into some of the modern frameworks and bundlers and almost impossible to replicate at home, at least within the reasonable amount of effort. And also, it's not the simplest feature to understand either. To actually make sense of it, especially in the performance context, it's almost mandatory to have a very clear mental model of how React renders and fetches data, both on the client and on the server, because here's the fun part, we had the concept of server rendering for years. So what exactly is the difference here? This is what I want to find out. And to do this, I built a single-page app with a few client-side routes and client-side data fetching. I measured its performance as like a baseline. Then I introduced some basic SSR on top of that, measured it, then more complicated SSR with data fetching, and then server components to polish it all off, and of course measured it. The end result, bunch of numbers that you will see in a moment. So here is the guinea pig app that I used. It's already quite interactive. It has a few pages. For the purpose of today's measurement, I will be focusing on this inbox page with a bunch of messages. The important part here is items in the sidebar are fetched dynamic. They are fetched from a quite fast endpoint. It takes around 100 milliseconds to execute. List of messages here is fetched from quite slow endpoint. Takes like a second to execute. I'm going to use Chrome DevTools to measure initial load, and I'm mostly interested in the network panel for the duration of the talk. The metrics that are interesting here are when the page becomes visible, which happens to correspond to the metric in Chrome called LCP, largest contentful paint. Then when the sidebar items become visible, it's somewhere here. And then when the messages themselves become visible, somewhere here. And also those settings for measurement, so because of fast laptops and fast internet, as we all know. So that is the setup. Let's finally investigate something. Start with the baseline, client-side rendering. But first, let's set the foundation. What exactly is client-side rendering? From implementation point of view, it means that when your browser requests an inbox page, the server responds with HTML that looks like this, just an empty div and nothing else. To actually transform it into a beautiful page, the browser has to do a bunch of work that you need to, before you see anything useful. So it downloads CSS and JavaScript, and then parses and runs JavaScript, then React kicks in, the page pops up, and after that, the data fetching kicks in, and we wait for the network request, and after that, React still needs to render stuff, and then swap the placeholders with the real data. If I record performance profile of this, of my app, this is the picture you will see, and it's pretty much identical to the blocks that I just showed you. And now, finally, some numbers. So for the app that I'm measuring, the LCP initial load is like 4 seconds, then another 600 milliseconds for the sidebar, and then another 400 for the messages, which is not really great, technically, but also there are like a million ways to improve this situation. There is code splitting, caching, prefetching, and so on and so forth. But regardless of any improvements that we do, client-side rendering performance profile will always depend on JavaScript. This is its nature. So this dependence on JavaScript was one of the reasons that kicked off the boom of SSR and SSG frameworks for React a long time ago. The idea there is also quite simple. Instead of sending the empty div and asking the browser to build everything by itself, we can just pre-render this page into HTML on the server first and send this page there. How it actually works in React is also quite interesting. From implementation point of view, any React app is a hierarchical structure of components. A component is basically a function that returns React elements, and those elements are essentially just objects. Or those objects, they contain a reference to either components themselves or DOM elements that are supposed to be rendered on the screen. Basically, the entire app that you write can be represented by a tree like that. The point here is that tree, like any React code, starts with a single component that is like at the beginning of its all, the entry point. And from there, React just recursively builds the tree and transforms it into DOM nodes. In the browser environment, we then take this entry point, we pass it through some form of rendering function, in this case, hydrate root, and this will produce relevant DOM nodes. And those DOM nodes then will just basically append everything that is generated to the root element from that we received from the server. But what if instead of those DOM nodes, React could actually produce HTML, the actual string that we can return to the server, which is totally possible, and this is exactly the API that we have. And this is underneath, that basically powers all the SSR and SSG React frameworks. If we do this, then the absolutely basic server that serves our empty HTML to the client can still stay as basic as it is. We just need to add one tiny thing. We take a pre-rendered HTML and then find and replace it. Find and replace the empty DOM and replace it with HTML and then serve it to the client. Here it is. Here's your entire SSR. A performance profile, if I do exactly this, shifts. Just this. Now that we have some meaningful HTML, the site becomes visible when CSS, which is critical resource, is downloaded, but JavaScript still is in the process. We don't need to wait for it anymore. However, everything else other than the initial load stays exactly the same. There is absolutely no change. The browser still needs to do everything that it did before. It needs to attach event listeners to all this HTML and make components interactive. While we're waiting for all this JavaScript, the page is already visible, but nothing that is supposed to be interactive works. For any interactivity, we still need JavaScript. So we have to wait to finish for React to download and initialize itself. What it means on this page is there will be a point in time when, for example, this toggle, I click on it and then nothing happens. That is an unfortunate price we have to pay for any SSR solution. In case of my app, it's around 2.5 seconds. Then there is another slightly problematic area here, data fetching. So in this version, it still runs on the client as a side effect. So those two data-related numbers are completely the same as they were. But do they have to? Because we're already on the server, what exactly stops us from fetching this data on the server and then inject it into HTML and then send the entire page to the client right away? Absolutely nothing, and this is exactly what SSR frameworks again do that support data fetching. Basically, in simplified version, it looks like this. We fetch this data on the server. We inject this data then as props to React app. We then inject it into HTML, like this. And then a little bit of work on the app itself from the React perspective that is not really relevant here, so I'm going to skip it. And it actually works. Performance profile, in this case, will again shift. All of them will collapse together and move slightly to the right, because we now need to wait for all the data fetching requests to complete on the server. But when we do it, we send the entire page to the client, so they see all the sidebar and messages and initial load right away without any annoying loading spinners. Those are the numbers if I do exactly this. As you can expect, initial load for client side is the worst. Simple SSR introduces huge performance win for the initial load, but does nothing for the client side, for the client side data fetching. If we fetch data on the client, everything is improved, but initial load will be slightly slower because we now fetch data on the client, or on the server. And it comes at the cost of no interactivity gap, unfortunately. However, in real life, not that many people will implement all of this manually, and they shouldn't, because actually there is quite a lot of complexity that we need to build on top of that to actually make it work, especially if you're going with data fetching. You would need at least to introduce some form of routing on the server, and then some form of entry points, and then split code, so you don't prefetch data that is completely irrelevant, or the entire thing on just one single page. So at this point, you will likely use some form of framework. But regardless of the framework and regardless of its implementation, the performance profile will always look exactly the same for all of them. The difference here will be in how the framework handles JavaScript load, CSS load, and how they split all those files. For example, if I migrate my custom SSR to Next.js Pages router, the old one, profile will change like this. It does much more interesting stuff with the bundle splitting, so there will be more JavaScript files, slightly faster loads of the client-side data as a result. App router in SSR mode without any server components yet will look like this. JavaScript load is, they completely delay JavaScript somehow. So CSS will load faster. You will have initial load faster, but then everything else will be slightly slower as a result. Those are the actual numbers. So for now, App Router, Next.js App Router wins in the LCP improvements because of this delayed JavaScript. The one reason that I did, why I did this comparison is to actually see how splitting the code and delaying resources, how much effort and effect it has on performance before introducing anything like React Server Components into the mix. OK, so this is pure SSR, and as you can see, SSR can be really cool for performance. There is one issue still here. First is the amount of JavaScript that we download and then no interactivity gap because of it. Do we really need to have all this JavaScript on the client? Because if I look at the navigation component over here, it's just markup. It's just divs, links, classes, styles, basically, absolutely no interactivity. Why exactly it's included? Because it's still React, and React bundles everything together. So it's still JavaScript. The only reason it's there is because React needs to understand the entire tree to actually be able to render anything and to map all those objects to the actual thing that is rendered on the screen. And also, in any of the SSR implementations, this process of extracting this tree from React happens twice. First, we do it on the server to generate the actual HTML. And then we do it all over again on the client to attach all the event listeners to the generated HTML. So quite a lot of wasted work here. So this is finally where server components come in. The idea for server components is this. Let's stop including this completely static component into JavaScript and instead keep it on the server. We can generate the object on the server again. We can inject it into HTML in some shape or form. And then we can ask React to just recreate the DOM nodes from this object, bypassing all the interactivity altogether. This way, React can create the entire UI from this list of objects, while the actual code of the component stays on the server. This object, slightly transformed and embedded as a script tag, is literally what is React Server Components payload, RSC. If you open your Next.js app and pick into the console, this is it. In theory, something like this can be huge for bundle sizes. So imagine, for example, this component needs some really heavy library, like 5 megabytes, to generate this layout. The typical example will be any markdown parsers, editors, and stuff like that. So if it's implemented as a server component, all those 5 megabytes, they can stay on the server, and browser will never have to download any of them. In practice, I finally can test it. I already have an app. It's already on Next.js. I just need to enable it. Server components are supported by Next.js App Router. So let's do it. From the code perspective, it means that my app at the moment has everything under use client, including the very, very initial page and all the layouts and everything. This is how you make it completely SSR without server components. That also means that every component that uses this use client, and then every component inside this use client, is a client component, and this is going to be included in the bundle. So to convert my app into actual server components, all I need to do is remove use client from all the static components and just use it in components that actually need interactivity. So components with state, for example, are prime example. I did exactly this, and this is the result. The static login page that didn't have any interactivity at all, it dropped from 46 kilobytes to just 100 bytes, which is awesome. That means it works. A few pages changed a little bit. Shared chunk didn't change at all. The messages page, the one that I cared about and the one that I measured, also unfortunately didn't change at all. As you can imagine, this had exactly zero impact on any of my measurements. So this is the first takeaway here. In mixed apps, where you have a bunch of server components and then client components, server components alone may barely touch your bundle. You might get lucky, but most likely you will not. The real wins only will be visible on fully static pages with no interactivity, where you cannot just accidentally leak client components. So bundle size is slightly underwhelming, but okay. We still have our data fetching story. Where exactly data fetching happens here? So if you remember the classic SSR data fetching flow that I just showed you, we first wait for all the data on the server. We pass this data through render to string. We then bundle it all together and send it to the client. Client happily see the entire page on the screen. From the code perspective, it's basically this. We await all the promises, we parse and inject stuff, and then we send it to the server, to the browser. But what if, instead of all of this, we could do something completely different? What if we could trigger data fetching, and then immediately, without waiting for rendering and anything, immediately send some very critical HTML to the browser? The user will see some, at least, page skeleton, maybe some placeholders, maybe even some static data, while we wait for stuff to happen. Then we can repeat exactly the same story when sidebar data is available, and then exactly the same story when the messages are available. Basically, can we do something like this on the server? And this is, first of all, it's pretty much the same data flow that we have on the client, only just buried deep in the server. So in theory, it could be much faster. And also, this is exactly what you get when you combine the idea of server components with streaming. This is how it works. From the actual implementation point of view, it's this. First of all the synchronous data fetching on the server, it goes away. And it's replaced with a render to pipeable stream thingy from React that emits HTML and RSC payload together in chunks. As soon as each chunk ready, it is sent to the browser. We don't wait for all of them to resolve. Second big thing is data fetching. It moves from the server, from the sync server and from the client to the server components. First of all, we need to rewrite them to be async and move all the data to the component body. This part is actually quite hard. And not because it's hard to have two asynchronous functions in the top of the component, of course, but because as soon as I do this, I need to make sure that components and that this component and then every single component as a parent component stay server component forever. Because this is the complicated part here, client components, they cannot be async, and they cannot fetch data in the render body without causing infinite loops. If even one of the components suddenly becomes a client component, you will be in trouble in your app. So when rewriting data fetching, I need to be very, very careful about all of this and to not accidentally turn some components into client components, which is a bit of a problem, to say the least, because look at this one. Can you guess whether it's server or client? No, you cannot, because there is no way to tell, because there is no use client. That means it can be client, it can be server, or it can be both. It depends on the content. It completely is controlled by the component that renders it. So this is the huge price to pay for the server component that we have. And speaking of increasing in complexity, I'm still not done with the tech talk here. We also have suspense. And suspense is a very crucial component in all of this. So I need to wrap streamable chunks in suspense in order for them to work. Basically, suspense is what defines those streaming chunks that I just showed you. From the code perspective, it's basically this. Without them, React will treat the entire tree, regardless of how many server components you have, as just one big chunk. It will wait for all of them, and then you will end up with exactly the same blocking profile as your classic SSR. So let's, for example, during my migration, I forgot about suspense. What will happen? The end result is this. If I forget about suspense, numbers are exactly the same as SSR. If I introduce suspense, it finally works as expected. Performance profile is also quite hilarious when you introduce server components, because you now see this huge blue line of HTML is where the server keeps connection to the browser and then piping those chunks into the client. This is how you know that you're still using server components rather than classic SSR mode. OK, so those are all the numbers all together from the same framework for comparison. As we can see, a real difference shows up when you use data fetching with server components. And if you don't really care about dynamic data, performance is exactly the same as with classic SSR. But still, it's quite a lot of green. It's quite cool. So it's quite nice. 1 second. But it's still within the controlled environment of my little experiment. What about the real world? If you remember at the beginning of the lecture, I said I joined a small startup, and they went all in on server components and AI-assisted coding. You know what happens with all those green numbers when you combine those together? This. Unfortunately, because in the real world, AI took over, and AI does not care about any of these existential concepts and mental models that I've been talking about. It's a very efficient pattern matching and pattern replicating machine. It sees data passed as props. Oh, it likes it. It adds some more. Then it adds more props in really weird places. Then it adds more conditional rendering somewhere deep in the tree. And before you know it, your app turns into server-fetched data waterfall. Lots of loading spinners. Initial load takes seconds. Then at some point, you need to fetch some data in client components very deep in the client in the render tree. Somewhere here. But we all in on server components. There is no data fetching on the client still yet, no framework or anything. So what AI will do here? No, it's not going to stop and think. It will just say, oh, I see, we're in client components. I need to use client-side data fetching. Let me quickly implement it for you. And then you have this. Then you have client-side data fetching implemented with use effects, with simple fetching. Inside your app powered by server components, zero caching, zero prefetching, as if data fetching framework haven't been invented yet. SPA navigation in your really slow app with a bunch of spinners now also turned into shit and became unsufferably slow. This is not even the worst part of all of this. Because we are on the bleeding edge, we're using server components, but we're building interactive app. So that means we need to send data to the server. And since we're on the bleeding edge, we probably use actions. Those are quite fun. Those are a new feature, really easy to use. You just export a function, slap use server at the top, and then you import this function in a component, and everything magically works. You know what AI does when there is no API layer for data fetching, only actions, and then it needs client-side fetching? It was to start using actions for data fetching. Then you will have this, which slightly controversial, yes, but it actually works. It's really good. You have type safety. The code is completely minimal. OK, yes, you have some use effects here and there that actually fetches the data, but the usage is actually very simple. And also you have type safety. So you start thinking, ooh, what a clever AI, what a brilliant idea. You even Google it, and you see a bunch of articles that say, we should use actions for data fetching. Yes, they are post requests, but who cares? Actions are great. And then you start noticing some really weird stuff. Then suddenly your app, that is not the fastest one to begin with, becomes slower and slower and slower for no apparent reason. You finally peek into the network panel, and you see this. Did you know that actions cannot run in parallel? I'm not kidding. This will result in waterfall. The seemingly parallel request is this. So you have now no parallelization, no cache, no prefetching, over and over on every single SPA transition. Yeah, you will have fun. This is not even the worst thing about the server components, but I'm now out of time, so I will skip it. The thing here is, this is not a skill issue. Everything is completely reasonable. Everyone involved are competent enough. It's just slowly just building on top of each other. It's just a brutal delivery pace of modern startups coupled with AI ability to produce a lot of code that looks really believable and actually functionable from the very beginning, from the first glance, plus really counterintuitive and really fragile patterns of modern React. So after staring at all of this for like my onboarding week at the new job, the decision was simple. Sorry if I have Next.js people here. This is what happened. So I ripped all of this, all the things completely, and I just replaced it with good old Tanstack query and traditional REST requests. We still use server components. We use them on the page level for data fetching. But instead of passing it through properly like that, we just shove it into Tanstack, we hydrate it store, and then we get all the benefits of SSR by default. Then on the client, where we actually need the data, we extract it from Tanstack, and that's it. No more uncached fetch requests, no more manual state management. Prefetching is explicit, is very simple, good documentation. And the best part is it's very structured and very, very easy to replicate for our clever pattern matching machines. The worst that AI can screw up here is forget about SSR hydration. But that is, well, OK, it kind of sucks, but it's also not that big of a deal, because as soon as someone notices it, they will fix it with just one liner, and again, it works. But all the new code that now our LLMs and everyone who wipe codes in the app add, it's performed by default. And we can just worry about delivering features on schedule rather than struggling with those abstract, conceptual, mental models of the framework. I now have an allergy to the word abstract and conceptual, to be honest, and mental model. So I seriously should have just named this talk, just use Tanstack query. Woo! OK, so final brag moment. After a couple of months of refactoring of all of this, initial load dropped from this to 1.8 seconds. SPA transitions moved from seconds to milliseconds. And now I get the feedback from the users and from our founders that looks like this. The app is now fast, finally. The AI was there the entire time. The only thing that it could do is just to add more mess on top of it. After a couple of months of cleaning the repo, I'm now convinced, and no one can convince me otherwise, is that AI coding and server components are deeply incompatible. It's just absolutely not. The mental model is way too nuanced, way too fragile. Failure modes are way too subtle. The consequences of getting it wrong are just cascading through the entire app and making everything much worse. So if you had questions on whether AI can replace developers soon, I hope this answers it. And no, this is not about prompting better. This is about understanding how things actually work and using this knowledge to choose an architecture where everyone who contributes to the repo, including people who don't know how to code and use AI in ever-increasing qualities, so that they can just physically cannot make a dumb mistake and ruin the entire app. And unfortunately, server components is not that architecture. I feel like I need a mic to just drop it. So if you want to have more deep dives and opinions, here's my blog. You can find lots of stuff there. And thank you for listening.